So the other day I was rewatching Uncut Gems, and I completely forgot that The Weeknd had a cameo in it, which kinda caught me off guard, because I didn't even know that The Weeknd was around in 2012. So of course, you guys know me. I had to do a little digging, and digging turned into deeper digging, which turned into a full-on iced matcha library excavation, because it starts with The Weeknd was around in 2012, but then it turns into how many albums does he have? Does he write all his songs? What's his real name? And why the fuck is he called The Weeknd? And where's the E? See, I'm kind of weird in the sense that if you were to walk up to any random person on the street and ask them if they like The Weeknd, they'd probably say, yeah, I love his music. But if you asked me, I'd say, of course. It's my favorite weekly 2-day span. At the time of this video's recording, The Weeknd has the most monthly listeners on Spotify, with Taylor Swift sitting at a hefty 18 million listener deficit, which I guess would warrant him the title of most popular artist at the moment, that moment being January 30th at 4:04 p.m. That honestly just makes me feel even worse for never having listened to his stuff. Ugh. Don't look at me. But you guys want to know something weird? As of Monday, January 30th at 4:05 p.m., Shakira's sitting at number 4. Really? Shakira? I guess I know whose discography to review next. Let me take this hood off. Ugh. You're probably wondering how this presumably American-raised Zoomer hasn't listened to the most famous artist around right now. He has 96 million listeners on Spotify. Surely you've listened to at least some of his stuff. And yeah, you're right. I've listened to some. But so is my mom. My grandma probably knows Blinding Lights, and she doesn't even speak English. So the objective for today's video is to listen to every mixtape, EP, and studio album by The Weeknd, effectively rank, review, and synopsize every project, and learn as much as I can about him as an artist along the way. You know, just so I can say that I know more about pop culture than my 51-year-old mom. 51? 52? Here I am trying to learn more about The Weeknd. I don't even know how old my own mother is. Abel McConan Tesfaye, male 32, 5'8", and he's Canadian. The Weeknd has 5 official studio albums, 3 mixtapes, and 1 EP. All 3 of his mixtapes were released before any of his albums back in 2011 under his personal unofficial record label titled XO. So that's what that logo on everybody's hoodie is. Good to know. The following year, he signed with Republic Records, who would end up being the primary distributor for all of his music moving forward, but he also distributes through XO too. I'm not really sure how it works, but he is the founder, so I guess he could do whatever he wants. Now, once The Weeknd was picked up by Republic Records, they reproduced all 3 of his mixtapes and put them into a single compilation album titled Trilogy. According to my trusty pal Reddit, the differences between the songs on the mixtapes and Trilogy are pretty noticeable, but they both have their upsides and downsides. I plan on listening to Trilogy because I feel like it's gonna make for a more fluid listening experience for me. Plus, it has 3 extra songs that aren't on the mixtapes. Look, numbers like that don't lie, okay? I'm sure he makes great music. But regardless, I'm looking forward to listening to all of his stuff. Really getting the chance to peel back all the layers of bandages and Botox and answer the question, who is Abel McConan Tesfaye? I understand that that's a pretty tall order so early on, but his discography seems like the right place to start. Also, he calls himself The Weeknd as a tribute to when he was younger, and he dropped out of high school and left home one weekend and never came back. And he removed the 3rd E to avoid trademark issues with a Canadian band titled The Weeknd. See, that makes sense. You want to know something stupid? DNCE, the band, publicly stated that they chose their name because it's an imperfect spelling of dance, and you don't have to be perfect to dance. Like, what? Like, I get it, it's like the beauty in our imperfections or whatever, but that's lame. Anyways, with Trilogy, the My Dear Melancholy EP, and his 5 studio albums, including the deluxe edition for After Hours and Dawn FM Alternate World, it's basically just another deluxe edition. We are left with a total of 121 songs and 521 minutes, or 8 hours and 41 minutes, of music. Honestly, not terrible. Taylor was like 12 hours, so I can definitely bang this out in like a week. Sub losers. I cranked out most of the Trilogy album. I have a few songs left. I enjoyed it. I think it's definitely a type of music that I'm not really used to, but I definitely am able to see the appeal. Damn, I'm breaking out. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry I have to look at that. All of these songs were a lot more experimental than I was expecting. Each song is like 6 minutes on average, which sometimes I enjoyed, sometimes I didn't enjoy. And there's an underground feel to the entire thing that I just didn't expect at all. But I liked it. With these songs, he's definitely letting the arrangements take the driver's seat, with his vocals kind of serving as like icing on top, which led to some pretty crazy arrangements that blew my Swiftie ass's goddamn mind. That said, his vocals on this album were still really good. Prior to this video, I kind of saw The Weeknd as like a fine singer, but his voice kind of just does the one thing. But this album just completely proved me wrong. When he hits those cry tones on DD, for example, is that what they call it? Double D? I don't know. Beautiful. So my friend literally just texted me saying that I should listen to the mixtapes instead of Trilogy. Apparently there were a lot more samples that were used in the mixtapes that got cut out for Trilogy because Republic Records didn't like them. I don't know, but I guess I'll have to check those out. You know, I should have known to listen to the originals. I can smell the comment section cooking already. I don't know that I would recommend this album as a starting point for new listeners to The Weeknd, but maybe become familiar with him as an artist first and then go back and listen to Trilogy or the mixtapes or whatever. Because on my first listen, I definitely felt a little bit overwhelmed with everything. But I'm listening to it again while writing the script and after having listened to his entire discography, and I'm definitely liking it a lot more. I like most of the songs, but in general, I think none of them really resonated with me beyond just liking them. But I guess we'll have to wait and see how they grow on me. Alright, I just got back from the gym and I macked on some fucking chicken tenders, but I finished Kissland at the gym. He was still very experimental. If anything, he was a little more experimental with different sounds and arrangement pieces that he would use. But I think the general appeal of this album is a step closer to the version of The Weeknd that I'm familiar with. At this point, his vocals and lyrics seem to be a more integral part to the songs, but he definitely hasn't lost sight of his original sound. If anything, I think this album feels like more of Trilogy with just a little bit more pop appeal and a little bit more polished vocals. As a standalone project though, this one does feel like the most forgettable, because it feels like a transition between that underground R&B sound from Trilogy to the poppier R&B that we're gonna get from him later on. But at this point in listening, I was starting to see how he sort of modernizes what you'd normally expect from R&B and turns it into his own sound that actually feels like its own genre, and it's pretty dope. But again, I found myself not really being able to connect with any of these songs because he talks about fucking a lot, and if I'm being honest, I don't fuck a lot, so there's kind of a gap there. But there is an energy to these songs that feels sort of like wide-eyed and motivated, and I can relate to that sort of youthfulness. After all, he was around my age when this album came out, which is just crazy. He definitely gets bonus points for that, because I can't imagine having the brain capacity to ever make music like this, let alone at my age. Here's my top 5. This album is probably my least favorite, but that's not to say anything bad about it. It's just the rest are so good. This one just feels the least certain of an identity, and because of that, I just feel like it's gonna be less memorable in the long run. If I think right now, I can't really name a track on it, I'm not gonna lie. Good morning, losers. So last night, I finished Beauty Behind the Madness. Definitely liked it more than Trilogy, and I definitely also liked it more than Kissland. It just felt like it had more pop appeal, and I don't mean to be like basic. I enjoyed it. Woo! Alright, losers, we're starting to heat up. The other day, I slept with product in my hair, and when I woke up the next morning, I kind of looked like The Weeknd on this album cover.
And I know she'll get the best of me, at least we'll both be them.
I hope that isn't cultural appropriation. Yikes. Beauty Behind the Madness, to me, is a great album. It's where I think he establishes a good balance between the dramatic sound of his earlier projects and modern pop music, which results in plenty of memorable tracks for us to enjoy. And please, for the love of God, do not be that guy that gets annoyed when I throw around the word pop. There's nothing wrong with liking pop songs, man. Get off your high horse, okay? They're popular for a reason. This album is kind of like The Weeknd's Red, in my opinion, because it establishes like a house sound that's sort of a general representation of his music. It's the perfect starting point for anyone that's new to his music because it's honestly the least ambitious and also the most easy to digest. But like in a good way, you know, it's a good thing. It's like the first season of Community. Could you imagine if every episode of that show was a paintball western or a movie parody? You need something to establish the status quo before you start to branch out to other things, and that's what this album is to me. It's The Weeknd at his barest bones, and everything else is sort of just him branching out and being more experimental. For me, the songs I like most are the ones that I can sing along to, you know, the ones that get stuck in your head while you're driving, or I guess sitting in the passenger seat because I don't have my license yet. And up until this album, I just really wasn't getting that from The Weeknd. Angel is my favorite song. It's just such a perfect ending to this album, dude. And yeah, it's kind of a basic hook, but the sweeping feeling to the arrangements and the sick, dope-ass vocals build it into such a triumphant song that I was just so hyped for what's next.
I hope you find somebody.
So yeah, great album, great songs, great artist, great weekly 2-day span. So after my class today, I decided to spend some time in the library, and your boy cranked out all of Starboy and My Dear Melancholy. I really enjoyed Starboy. That one's definitely my favorite album so far. And it was like, the songs were unique, but they all kind of felt in the same family, you know what I mean? This album slaps, dude. There's just no other way of putting it. With Daft Punk on the first and last track of the album, you could definitely sense that inspiration sort of sprinkled throughout. He uses a lot of traditional instruments, like piano or guitar, but includes sort of, I guess, bouncy 808s and something like the vocal stack. I don't know, man. Starboy, the song, sets up the album really well. I really like those vocal chops in it where it goes, so fire, dude. Come on. And on the entire album, he uses a lot more vocal stacks and vocal chops, which in my opinion makes for a little bit more of an energetic, euphoric sound. Like, it's different than the usual underground sort of muffled sound that we got from him on the earlier projects. I know it's a basic pick, but my favorite song on the album is Die For You, and it's really not close at all. I challenge you to listen to that song with noise-canceling headphones in and not go. And I also think there's something that's really, like, simple but beautiful about it. I don't think the extreme of dying for someone is literal, but the whole thing is about being scared to go all in. And like, yeah, you know, I'm being an asshole right now and I can't commit, but just know I would die for you. Like, that shit is concise and poetic as fuck. I'm curious as to how big of a hand he has in the production of his songs, because it plays such a huge role with his music and overall appeal that I'd imagine he's pretty hands-on with it. But I tried to look it up and couldn't find a concrete answer. He definitely has some form of hands-on input. I just want to know how much. Like, is that so much to ask? Also, there's a line in Reminder that goes, "Got a sweet Asian chick, she go lo mein." And I thought it was just, she got lo mein, so I was prepared to make like a whole thing out of it. Like, oh, you would never say, got a sweet Mexican chick, she got tacos, or got a sweet white chick, she got McDonald's. But I double checked the lyrics, and it's supposed to be a double entendre, which I actually kind of liked. So, yeah. But yeah, great album. I'll probably go the rest of my life without listening to an album that's similar to this at all in terms of feel. But that's okay, because this album caters to everything I would want from that sound. Want a euphoric, upbeat pop song? Attention. Want a love anthem to sing your heart out to? Die For You. Want a potentially racist double entendre? Reminder. Not much to say about My Dear Melancholy. It was fine. There were some pretty great songs, but it's just not a project that excites me to talk about. It's like the cheese board that'll hold us over until the Thanksgiving feast that is After Hours. Here's my top 3. I'm not going to do top 5 because there's only 7 tracks. So yeah, it was cool, but But in a way, it kind of served as a return to status quo, which is necessary after Starboy. Anyways, vlog, you know what time it is. The shop is closed, alright? And right now, it's After Hours. God, that was really cringe. Fuck. After Hours. It's ineffable. You know what I mean? Dude. Are you kidding me? I should just rename this video Dear After Hours, I fucking love you, Abel McConan Tesfaye, please have my kids. This album is so fucking good. Obviously it's my number 1 based on how I'm talking about it, but it's really not close. It's After Hours, then like 20 years of completely vertical space travel, and then everything else. There's an overarching theme of not just heartbreak, but being the reason that that person left as well. And obviously that's not an original concept, but this album dives into the mental torment that something like that can really cause. You know, in a way, it's actually easier to blame someone else for breaking your heart than blaming yourself. So because of that, this album just strikes a note that's super rare. And not to turn this into my personal therapy session, but I have experience with, I guess, dealing with a situation where I initially blamed the other person entirely, but the further I pulled away from it, the more I realized that I was also kind of a prick. But you know, you can't always fix that. So I think because of that, this album struck a little bit closer to home for me. A perfect example is in the song Hardest to Love. I fucking love this song. I've been the hardest to love. There's something about it that is simple, but I was listening to it while walking in the rain, and it was like 30 degrees out. Holy shit. If I wasn't wearing contacts, I really might have cried. And that's not like something I do. Like, I don't cry when watching movies and stuff, but that song is just different. I'd also like to get a warrant for the arrest of one Abel McConan Tesfaye, because it is a crime to have Hardest to Love and Scared to Live back to back on the track list. Completely flowing into each other too? I damn near collapsed on the sidewalk. I feel like this album handled that descent really well. The entire thing is just on a downward trajectory, going through different phases of grief and getting more and more sad until the eventual low point of After Hours, the song. And between the lyrics and those 80s synths, why is it so hard to say? 80s synths and the snares, man. I fucking love those snares. It all just makes for a great album. I guess I should probably address Blinding Lights at some point in this video. It's a great song, and like, it matches the vibe and like themes of this album or whatever. But listening to the album from start to finish, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. But yeah, the album is so good. It's been a few days since I first listened to it all the way through, and I just can't get enough of it. But we do have one more album to talk about, so I guess I should move things along. I forgot to record my initial reaction to Dawn FM, so I figured I could fake it, or I could just be honest. And you guys know we keep it a bill around here, so here I am. After Hours, I was so ready to see what was in store for this album. Was it better than I expected? No. Better than After Hours? No. At least not in my opinion. But it was solid. Definitely didn't disappoint. If After Hours took some 80s inspiration, Dawn FM really just took that and ran with it, cranked it up to 1100. For better or worse, but I liked most of it. In many ways, it feels like building yourself back up after the rock bottom point that After Hours ends on, and that aspect of it was really nice. The album was formatted to be like a radio show with like a lot of interludes and stuff, so that was really cool. So I just found out that the voice of the radio guy on Dawn FM is Jim Carrey. Well done. As an overall listening experience, it was great. Definitely, maybe kind of curated better than After Hours. I just think the synths in this album were really repetitive, but there were still a lot of songs I really liked. Definitely a lot more poppy, but still held on to those R&B roots a little bit. Guys, I have a bit of a hot take. I know that a lot of people consider The Weeknd to be a quote-unquote toxic lover in his songs, but I disagree. See, I feel like most artists write their songs about antagonizing their ex or sulking in their heartbreak, and that's fine. What works, works. But The Weeknd admits to being toxic, which is really relatable and something that a lot of artists don't do, at least not to the extent that he does. Because quite frankly, you can parade around all you want with your little black Instagram squares, hours spent at soup kitchens, limbs lost in service of this country, but I don't care. I mean, no, I do care. Thank you for your service. But my point is, everyone is at least a little bit toxic. It's human nature, and in my opinion, it's more toxic to be ignorant to that fact than admitting it. The Weeknd wears his flaws on his sleeve, and I commend him for that. This idea is clear throughout his entire discography, but it's definitely most predominant in After Hours, and I think that's another reason why I felt such a personal connection to it. And look, at the end of the day, everyone's gonna like an artist for their own reasons. And you see, I could go on and on about what I think The Weeknd does well, or why I think people like him so much, but establishing that emotional connection with his music, that's what it's all about, right? So I guess you could say I'm a Weekender, or Weekend-y. Does he have a name for his fan base? Like Weekling or something? But hypothetically, if you were to ask me, after having listened to all of his songs, why I think he's become so popular, I don't know that I'd have a concrete answer. Some of the best artists are the ones that combine multiple genres of music to create their own sound. And The Weeknd and Taylor Swift are two great examples of that. I also think he relies a lot more on the production of his music to convey his messages than other artists usually do, which just ends up making for much more immersive songs. But honestly, sometimes people just like an artist because they're good at what they do. And The Weeknd is probably the best at what he does, which is a modern take on R&B with varying amounts of depth throughout his discography depending on how deep down the rabbit hole and how deep into your bag you feel like going. Here's my official ranking of the albums. Again, this is just my personal opinion. It's not what I think is objectively true, but I invite you guys to share all your thoughts down in the comments. And while you're down there, what's your favorite The Weeknd album/song? I hope you enjoyed this video. I honestly had so much fun making it. I think this is the type of content you guys could expect from me moving forward. I strayed a little bit, but at the end of the day, this video and like the Taylor Swift ones, they're the ones I like making the most. So subscribe if you're new, and let me know what other artists you want to see. I really want to have fun with this series. This is gonna sound weird, but I kind of want to do MGK. Just because he's so universally hated, it would be fun to try and figure him out. But I don't know. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.